Hey, what up, guys? Coming to you again with the year-end top 10s in the 122-pound super bantamweight division. Right now, I'm going to be discussing numbers 2, 3, and 4. So we'll go down from 4, 3 to 2 in normal countdown style and break down these fighters at this weight class and get a good breakdown and opinion on them from me. So we start with number 4, finishing the year number 4. Is the former IBF world champion TJ Doheny, who entered the year number 6. So he moves up a couple spots. He was coming off of 2018 where he kind of came out of nowhere, even though he was the undefeated mandatory IBF mandatory challenger, and he upset Ryusuke Iwasa of Japan in Japan with a controversial 12-round unanimous decision. I say controversial because most people felt that Iwasa won that fight, myself included, and people were surprised that Iwasa didn't get a decision in his home country of Japan. But Doheny, so to me, he was coming in kind of got a gift. He signed in early January, he signed a contract with Matchroom and DAZN, and he took on, he ended up making the first defense of his title against some unknown fighter named Ryohei Takahashi, and he dominated that fight, got an 11th round TKO, and kept his belt. This was a setup for a unification bout, which ended up happening in April with Daniel Roman. This ended up being the biggest, most anticipated fight of the year because it was unifying titles, which I love. I love when guys get together and unify belts. And this fight got together on an undercard, surprisingly, and it stole the show. This was a fucking great fight. I thought Doheny was going to get his ass whipped because Roman was number 1 coming in and is an established fighter in the division. And early on, it looked like that. Roman was winning the early rounds. He even hurt Doheny. Doheny came back in the middle rounds, though, and really fought hard. I believe he went down early, but he came back in the middle rounds and really was outworking Roman, and he even hurt him. He looked like he almost could have scored the knockout in like the 6th or 7th round. But during the championship rounds, Roman found his legs, won most of those, and really wore down Doheny. But it ended up being a great fucking fight, one of the candidates for fight of the year. But Roman walked away the unified champ, winning a majority decision over Doheny. But Doheny in defeat proved more to me than he did in the victory over Iwasa. He proved he belonged in the top 5 and was a legitimate top fighter at this weight class. He took some time off, but he ended up coming back on a DAZN undercard in October, and he fought some unknown guy a couple pounds above the weight class. Jesus Martinez got a 5th round TKO. So entering 2020 now, he's ranked number 1 in the WBC. He's 33 years old, and his overall record is 22-1 with 16 knockouts. Heading into 2020, he needs to get another title shot. After that performance he turned in, I know he wants a rematch with Roman. I don't think that's going to happen because Roman's got mandatories due. He's got a mandatory at 1 for his WBA belt that he's making in January. After that, it'd be the IBF title. If he were to give up the belt, then he could possibly face Doheny or whoever he wants after that. But I really think Roman's going to push towards possibly unification bout. Could happen a rematch there, but him being the number 1 contender for the WBC title is a good thing. And I think it could lead to a possible showdown with Ray Vargas, the undefeated WBC champion, which I would love to see that fight. Both guys fight on DAZN. That's just Golden Boy has to work it out with Matchroom, but they've done that already, so why not? He's the number 1 contender. I would love to see that fight. Doheny, I do believe, will get a world title shot in 2020 and a chance to prove himself. So we'll see. Okay, finishing the year number 3 is undefeated WBC champion Ray Vargas, the guy we just mentioned. Vargas entered 2019 at number 3, and he held down that spot and stays number 3 heading into this year. Yeah, so in 2019, he was coming off of 2018 where he only fought once. He broke his jaw in that fight with Azat Havanassian, and then ended up having to take the rest of the year off. So he came back in 2019 and was looking like he was taking an easy opponent, a stepping stone type guy, and just staying busy against Franklin Manzanilla, who had upset his original number 1 contender, Julio Ceja. That ended up being not the case. Manzanilla almost knocked Vargas out in the 2nd or 3rd round. He dropped him hard in that fight. Vargas was almost out, and he barely made it to his feet. He weathered that storm and found his legs and just outboxed and outclassed Manzanilla the remainder of the fight. But he had a big scare there. But he retained his world title. Then he came back in July and made a mandatory defense of his belt against interim champion Tomoki Kameda of Japan. This he ended up outclassing Kameda in this one, just outworking him, outclassing him. But, you know, not a lot of power on display, but he got the win and won the decision. There was some issue with him testing positive for some kind of drug. The WBC cleared him eventually towards the end of the year. I know he had mentioned a unification bout with Emmanuel Navarrete, but nothing ever came from that. Yeah, he closed out his year. He fought in July, and he closed out the rest of his year not fighting at all or even scheduling his next fight. So really don't know what he's doing exactly next, but he's 29 years old. Again, he's the WBC champion. I personally believe Vargas needs to, in 2020, he needs to take that next step. He needs to fight Daniel Roman, the WBA and IBF champion, attempt to unify belts, or I think the thing he needs to do next, because Roman has stuff going on, I think he needs to make his mandatory against TJ Dahani. Dahani's number 4, he's number 3. This would be a good win right here, and especially if he dominates Dahani even more than Roman did, he can demand a Roman fight later on. So I really think he needs to make a mandatory against Dahani, who is his number 1 contender, next, and then go after a unification bout, whether it be Roman or whether it be Navarrete later in the year. But I think Vargas needs to finally step up and take over this division. He's been number 3 for a couple years now. He needs to step up and take over this division. So we'll see. But I do like him. Throws a lot of punches, all action, golden boy fighter, fighting on DAZN. And finally, finishing up this video, finishing the year number 2, is the reigning WBO champion, Emmanuel Navarrete of Mexico. This guy, I said the WBO champion. He last year he finished the year number 2, so he just holds down that spot. And he was coming off of an upset 12-round decision over Isaac Dogbe, and previously undefeated Isaac Dogbe in December of 2018. He dominated the action in that fight, got a clean decision. But Dogbe fought hard. So Dogbe demanded an immediate rematch. And in May, the two locked horns again. This time, honestly, I thought Dogbe was going to win a close decision. But Navarrete said nope. His height and reach and his aggressiveness, he fucking destroyed Dogbe in a rematch. Put him down, I think, 4 times overall. Just absolutely beat him up and beat the shit out of him. Before finally in the 12th round, and way too late, Dogbe's father threw in the towel. But a big win right there. He proved he is legit at 122. After that, he struggled to find opponents. So he just stayed busy. He took on 3 unknown fighters. In August, he took on some guy named Francisco de Vaca, 4th round knockout, retained his belt. Then in September, he took on some guy named Juan Elorde, 4th round knockout, and then got another 4th round knockout in December against some unknown fighter, Francisco Horta. Retained his belt in every defense. Good, strong, finished 4-0, 4 knockouts. I mean, how are you going to complain about that? So a good finish to the year. Now, he's only 24 years old. That's what's shocking. He's only 24 years old, very young, and he's already a world champion. He's very entertaining. He's coming into the year, though, kind of unknown what he's going to do. He fights for Top Rank, and Top Rank doesn't have anybody in the top 10 for him, really, in my opinion, to fight that's legitimate, that could, be believable and be a big fight. So he's got a couple options. I mean, next, what I would do is push for a unification bout against Vargas. But if he can't get that fight, I say he makes a mandatory of his belt next, gets that out of the way, and then hopefully gets a unification bout in the second half of the year. I also think there's a good chance Navarrete can move up to 126, where there's more top-ranked fighters there for him. But yeah, it sucks because Navarrete is very good, and I'd love to see him fight Roman and Vargas, and I think he might be the best of all of them, but he just needs to get the opportunity. And unfortunately, fighting for Top Rank and in a division where not a lot of guys are, crossing the street, it's tough. But I will say this, Bob Arum and Al Heyman from the PBC are talking about doing more fights together because they're doing Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. This might benefit a guy like Navarrete because Brandon Figueroa fights over for the PBC. Ryosuke Iwasa fought for the PBC this past year, and Guillermo Rigondeaux's over there too. So maybe we can get some of these fights taken care of and done and get these guys fighting each other. We'll see. But Navarrete, you don't want to miss him. Wherever he's fighting, fights for Top Rank. That's ESPN. And he's an all-action, great Mexican fighter. A lot of power. His overall record, I don't think I gave you guys that. He's 30-1 with 26 knockouts. Guy's very good, so make sure you check him out. All right, guys, that's it. That's the top 10 super bantamweight, numbers 2, 3, and 4. I'll come back with number 1. True Boxing. You've been hit with the truth.